Good afternoon. The first item of business this afternoon is Scottish Parliamentary Corporate Body question time. I'd invite members wishing to ask a supplementary to press the request to speak buttons during the relevant question. And I call question number 1, Paul O'Kane.
Thank you, Deputy Presiding Officer. To ask the Scottish Parliamentary Corporate Body whether it will consult MSP staff trade unions before deciding on uprating the staff cost provision in the 2025-26 financial year.
Jackson Carlo.
Thank Paul O'Kane for that question, which is a question we've received similarly in previous years. And the corporate body will not consult the trade unions because it is not the employer of member staff. The SPCB is responsible for funding the members' expenses scheme and for determining which indices are used to uprate the overall provisions, including staff cost provision. This arrangement is set out in the scheme as agreed by the Parliament. Our responsibility is to set the framework within which salary increases can be agreed, but it is for individual members as the employers to determine any salary increase within the overall budget available, either on their own or in concert with colleagues.
Paul O'Kane.
Can I thank Jackson Carlow for that question? In doing so, remind colleagues of my register of interest as a member of the GMB Union. The Parliamentary Staff Unions are a large and active body and have worked year after year to deliver fair pay consideration for their members. And whilst I recognise what Jackson Carlow has said, that they are not negotiating bodies due to the parliamentary staff structure, would the corporate body not agree that those who determine paying conditions for staff should be in some form of formal communication with staff whose decisions they affect? And I wonder, in answering, will he say what inflation index the SPCB intend to use to calculate the pay uplift this year?
Jackson Carlo.
Well, in relation to the second point, that will become apparent in near course. SPCB is required under the expenses scheme to agree an index to uprate the staff cost provision. We agreed in March 2020 to index according to a mix of average weekly earnings and the annual survey of hours and earnings, ASH as it's commonly known. This move to a basket of indices was considered to prove a steadier basis for the calculation. However, for the budget in 23-24 and 24-25, the SPCB chose average weekly earnings for the staff cost provision because the ASH index became quite erratic, and in consequence, the staff cost provision would have risen by significantly less than it did as a result of us adopting AWE. Now, we have to pick an index. And the analogy I've used is it's not for the Scottish Parliamentary Corporate Body members to perform as though we are bumblebees in a bottle, bouncing about erratically. There has to be an integrity behind the process. Therefore, suggestions made to us that we should just look to see which of these indices on an annual basis is going to deliver the largest uplift does not have a substantive integrity pinned to it. So while I'm not at this stage going to confirm which index we have used, it is important there is some consistency and continuity in this process, and I am confident that the index that the corporate body has adopted is the one that has proved consistent and favourable to all members. I would just say finally
very briefly,
that it is the case that there are a considerable number of members who are going to be well short this year of using their actual staff cost provision, and that therefore an uprated index would not make the difference to the provision they actually have.
Question 2, Tess White.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. To ask the Scottish Parliamentary Corporate Body whether it will provide an update on the output of the working group that was established to review the visitor experience in the Chamber.
Christine Graham.
Firstly, I thank the member for her question. Since September, the Head of Security has visited the Chamber regularly to observe the period between the end of First Minister's questions and the commencement of members' business to understand how the movement of visitors is handled by security staff. Initial findings have shown that the changeover has been swift, within 4 minutes, and those visiting were able to access the Chamber for the start of members' business. The changeover is, however, being kept under review.
Tess White.
Thank you for that answer. And I'm not talking about First Minister's questions here. So despite raising concerns about the seating arrangements for visitors in the Chamber, guests in the Scottish Parliament are still being positioned at the back of the gallery, and that's even when there's empty spaces at the front. It doesn't afford them the best viewing experience, and many have travelled significant distances to be able to watch proceedings. Now, we shouldn't be letting constituents down, particularly when they've travelled such a long way to see us and to see MSPs on their behalf. So as such, Please could I have reassurances from the SPCB that expedient action will be taken to improve the visitor experience in the chamber? Thank you.
Christine Graham.
Yes, I have very much sympathy for the member's supplementary, and this was raised at the corporate body this morning, and we are looking into this matter.
Thank you. Question 3, Stephen Kerr.
To ask the Scottish Parliamentary Corporate Body what progress has been made on the development of a Scottish Parliament app.
Claire Baker.
Thank you. I know that the member will be disappointed when I tell him there are no plans to develop a Scottish Parliament app. We do not have the capacity to develop an app, and the cost of commissioning an app externally is not proportionate to any perceived benefits. The member may be interested to know that the Scottish Parliament TV supplier has developed an app which gives access to live and archived Parliament broadcasts, but it is limited to this purpose.
Stephen Kerr.
Well, I am disappointed to hear that answer, but not entirely surprised, because I enthusiastically would like to see the development of an app, because I believe passionately in making Parliament accessible to the people of Scotland. And not just Parliament in terms of its televisual representations through the SPTV app, but the business of Parliament. And I would recommend that the corporate body look at the UK Parliament's apps. Now, why should the UK Parliament have these excellent apps and we don't? So I'm going to make another plea to the corporate body. Please make our Parliament accessible to the people of Scotland by giving them the means by which they are most likely to access it, namely an app.
Claire Baker.
Presiding Officer, I know the member has an interest in the Scottish Parliament having an app, as he'd had a positive experience of an app at Westminster, although the electorate did decide that would be short-lived. But he can still see the app if he wants to follow the business of the new government. As I said, our capacity in the Scottish Parliament is limited and does not compare to the resources available to the UK Parliament. Our website has been tested and optimised for use on all mobile devices, including mobile phones and tablets.
Question 4, Eleanor Whittam.
Thank you, Deputy Presiding Officer. To ask the Scottish Parliamentary Corporate Body whether it will review whether the Parliament is providing sufficient resourcing for the legislation team to support MSPs to lodge amendments to bills.
Maggie Chapman.
I thank the member for her question. As with other parts of the Parliamentary Service, the staffing of the legislation team was reviewed as part of the Strategic Resources Review at the beginning of this session. Staffing levels in this and other areas are monitored on an ongoing basis in response to demand. As necessary and where possible within budget, resources are flexed to meet changing demand.
Eleanor Whittam.
I thank Maggie Chapman for her answer. There are more and more MSPs seeking to table more amendments, which is great to see, and I think a testament to our desire to create robust legislation. But the dedicated, hard-working team to support us is very small, and I must put on record my thanks to them this week in our emergency legislation. The last 18 months of a Parliament are always busy with bills making their way through, so can I ask what more can be done to increase the team, ensuring timely support for MSPs and therefore the efficient passage of legislation?
Maggie Chapman.
I thank Ms Whittam for her follow-up question, and I appreciate her comments about the way in which the legislation team works. They have indeed supported 3 pieces of emergency legislation since May this year, and that has put considerable demand on their time. We will undertake, as the corporate body, to look to ensure that we are making the best use out of resources and that flex that I mentioned in my initial answer. We do know that there are some bills that have been subject to significant delays, and that obviously causes some issues in how we plan and prioritise resources and where they are. But we should have, in the next few months, a clearer idea of exactly when different pieces of legislation will be going through stages 2 and 3, and will hopefully be able to plan accordingly. But I hear Ms Whittam and her comments, and we'll take that back for further discussion. Thank you.
Question 5, Lorna Slater.
To ask the Scottish Parliamentary Corporate Body how it ensures that parliamentary staff are properly recognised and compensated for all of the work that they do for the Parliament, including any specific project work that is over and above their normal responsibilities.
Jackson Carlo.
The corporate body is mindful of its duty to ensure that the workload of its staff is carefully managed and that they are recognised for the valuable contribution that they make, including to project work. The SPCB's performance management approach ensures that staff objectives are set, reviewed and updated to ensure that staff are well supported in their roles. The corporate body operates pay policy arrangements which ensure that staff are appropriately compensated for additional overtime work they are required to carry out.
Lorna Slater.
The Parliament has given its support to the Gender Sensitive Parliament project, but it has not adequately resourced this work. Clerking staff and others are expected to do this work essentially as volunteers, over and above their core work. In addition, most of those volunteers are women. Does the SPCB consider that it is appropriate that women have to work as volunteers to improve equality in their own workplace? And will Mr Carlisle and the corporate body work to ensure that such projects aimed at improving inclusion in Holyrood will be resourced appropriately and staff compensated accordingly?
Jackson Carlisle.
A number of SPCB staff have volunteered to support the implementation of the recommendations of the gender-sensitive audit, including a number of male colleagues. Other staff have been allocated roles. Decisions on the allocation of resources to support this project have been based on the skills and experience of the individuals involved, as well as the substantive roles they hold. Gender has not, of itself, been a deciding factor. In all cases, in accordance with the SPCB's performance management approach, staff have taken on roles to support the work of the Gender Sensitive Audit Board on the basis that they have sufficient capacity and expertise to do so. The SPCB keeps this under constant review, as would be expected, to ensure that the correct level of staffing support is available to the board and that staff workload is properly and effectively monitored.
Thank you. Question 6, Liz Smith.
To ask the Scottish Parliament corporate body will it will provide an update on the access and exiting arrangements for the underground car park.
Claire Baker.
Thank you. I'm sure the member will appreciate the importance of security for the building and the changes that were made to the car park, which was identified as a weak spot. The 2 layers of security has resulted in longer waits to enter and exit the car park, but that has to be balanced with our security requirements. The system is working as designed.
Liz Smith.
I think I am by no means the only member who has very considerable concerns about the length of time that the member has just referred to. In my case, it was 16 minutes some months ago when there was a queue inside the car park of 7 vehicles. Now, that problem can be mitigated when the system is operated manually and the staff carefully allow several cars to exit at the same time. So can I ask again what the SPCB is doing to try to speed up the process and avoid the interminable delays which often keep us late for other engagements?
Claire Baker.
I do hear what the member says, and I am concerned about the length of time she's identified. It's not an experience I've had myself, but it's something the corporate body is looking seriously at. But we do need to balance the need for access to the building through the security system for a range of different vehicles. We do use the member's priority exit, and we're adjusting the times that suppliers can access the building. But for security reasons, suppliers do need to access the loading area through the car park. The corporate body are intending to observe the operation of the system, and we will consider any suggestions about how the process can be improved.
Thank you. Question 7, Richard Leonard.
To ask the Scottish Parliamentary Corporate Body whether it will provide an update on the training of MSPs and staff on duties under the Public Interest Disclosure Act 1998.
Jackson Carlisle.
Members are designated as prescribed persons under the Public Interest Disclosure Act 1998 following its amendment in December 2022. To support members in this role, the corporate body issued guidance on handling disclosures to all members and their staff. This guideline outlines the circumstances in which protected disclosures might be made to individual members, how they should manage these disclosures and the legal implications involved. We also arranged training offered by external experts in early 2023. These sessions offered some practical advice in handling cases.
Richard Leonard.
Thanks for that answer. The MSPs have been prescribed persons under the Act since 2022, and with rights come responsibilities. So can I ask the corporate body to re-establish in-person training and refresher courses for all MSPs and their staff before the end of Q1 2025?
Jackson Carlisle.
I think Richard Leonard makes a reasonable case. The corporate body has asked officials to review the training offered to members to ensure it meets all aspects of their role and to consider whether further training might be provided to help refresh their knowledge and understanding of their roles. Officials are also considering whether this training needs to be added to the member staff training plan in line with normal practice. The member staff forum will be consulted to ensure that it meets their needs.
Thank you. Question 8, Martin Whitfield.
Very grateful, Deputy Presiding Officer. To ask the Scottish Parliamentary Corporate Body what support is provided to MSPs when representing the Parliament at external engagements.
Christine Graham.
I thank the member for his question. Where members are officially representing the Parliament at external engagements, full support is provided by SPCB staff to assist with planning and delivering the engagement, including making logistical arrangements, providing briefings, accompanying to engagements and communications support. The exact nature of the support support will of course vary depending on the nature of the engagement.
Martin Whitfield.
Representation, particularly in other countries with other parliaments and other parliamentarians, is very important for the Parliament's reputation around the world. So can Christine Graham give specific examples of how members are supported when they travel abroad?
Christine Graham.
Well, I've listed them in my first response, but before departure, the IRO office actively confers with delegates on how the visit will be publicised, for example, asking members to sign off any social media content and whether to tag them personally. It also offers robust comms in support of committees, and again, as I said in my first reply, it really depends on the nature of the visit, what support there is. If there need to be some extraordinary support that was provided to the corporate body, then that would obviously be considered. Regarding communications, actually, the IRO Communications Office, ahead of external visits, discusses any proactive or reactive comms which may be required, because I'm aware that sometimes bad publicity, which is undeserved, is conferred in some of these visits.
Thank you, Ms Graham. And with apologies to those we didn't manage to reach during this question time, it's a busy afternoon of business, and therefore we're going to have to move on to the next item of business. But there will be a brief pause to allow front benches to change before we do so.